Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about sandblasting, and I'm going to cover pros and cons, different types of sandblasters, and I've got my own here. I've got 4 different types that I've collected over the years. So let's get into it and I'll show you what we've got. I've got a couple small sandblasters here, and this is an old siphon feed. It works kind of like an old paint gun. It just siphons it up. You fill the container up with sand. And I probably should have taken better care of this thing over the years, because what happened, a little bit of sand would stick in here, and from screwing this thing on, it wore the threads completely out of it. Now when I fill it up, I just have to hold it by hand while I'm sandblasting. You're only going to use it for small stuff, but it goes through a lot of sand. It seems like it wastes more than it actually uses, but it does do a pretty nice job. Probably the one that gets used the most is this Vacula. And this is actually a recycling sandblaster. You fill this bag up with sand, you put the tip onto your surface, pull the trigger, and it blasts it, it recycles it back into the bag. So it does work really good on small stuff, cleaning up spot welds and stuff like that. And I don't think this is available anymore. I've looked on Amazon, they don't have it. I did a Google search. Vacula products are still out there, but I can't find this sandblaster. But this has different replaceable tips, and this was a round one, and it's actually pretty worn out just from a lot of use. It started out a lot smaller than that. But it's got different tips. This is to go on like the bottom edge of a door. That'll keep the sand from flying all over the place. It's got an inside corner tip. There's an outside corner tip. It comes with a container of sand, and this was actually some other type of a media. I don't know if it was ground up walnut shells or something, but I just buy bags of sand at the hardware store. But these things actually work pretty good, and later on in the video I'm going to do a demonstration. I'm going to show all of these how they work, but this one here probably gets the most use anymore. This is the first sandblaster I ever bought, and I bought this probably in the late 70s, and it was a real common one. I don't know if this company is around anymore. You can find similar ones on Amazon, but I haven't found this company. I bought this one because it was fairly cheap at the time, and it'll hold about probably 60 pounds of sand. You can get a whole bag in there. And it's a siphon feed too. You just put your air hose onto here, and it creates a siphon. But these things here, I thought it was going to be a good blaster when I bought it, but these things use a lot of air. They go through a lot of air for the amount of work that they do. They're not that efficient. You have to have a lot of air pressure and a lot of volume. They work, but they're pretty slow, and I haven't used this thing in years just because of that. So I'll show you what my go-to sandblaster is for big stuff. Okay, this is a pressurized sandblaster, and you fill this up with sand, and it holds about the same as that other big siphon one I got. It'll probably hold 60, 70 pounds of sand. You put your air to it. This is pressurized, and it forces it out the bottom, but it also mixes it with some air. So it's not just a solid stream of sand. You can adjust the amount of sand coming out. And one thing I found out when I bought this, that it'll do a better job with less air pressure than the siphon one. So if you've got a smaller compressor at home, this actually works a lot better than anything else. Let me show you how this works. Now, to fill this with sand, you take this plug off the top. What I did, it was always a struggle to get sand in there. I rounded up an old steel funnel and I welded a pipe nipple to it. And I'll just screw that in there, pour my sand in there. Okay, on the back side, this is the air inlet, and this thing probably got banged around and that thing ended up breaking off the handle. You turn it on by using that valve there, and I just put some vice grips on it. Open up this main air supply valve. It's got actually 3 other valves on here, one underneath, one here, and one here. This one here, when you're done, this will just unload the pressure out of the tank. You're not waiting to take all the air out of the tank and wasting your sand. When you turn this on, the first thing it wants to do, this air is just going to go down that tube and out the hose without picking up any sand. So you can shut the air off to the hose, and this will divert it and it'll start pressurizing the tank. Once the sand starts coming out of the tank, then you can open this back up wherever you want it and adjust how much air mixes with the sand. So you can cut your sand down to very little or fairly heavy. On the bottom of this pipe where it goes out, it has another small valve like this that you can adjust the sand. The last time I went to use this, this is the fitting that the other end of this hose hooks to. and that sand wore completely through there, and I could hear all the air blowing out from underneath, so I took it apart and it just made it paper thin. So I had to replace that. All the brass valves and fittings that the sand go through, it just wears them down to nothing. And I think that valve is probably wore out inside, but it works good where it's at. And this is where the air comes through on the back side to mix with the sand coming down from the tank. Right here where the hose goes on, that's that fitting that the sand just completely wore through. All right, let's talk about safety with these sandblasters. You need to wear protective gear. When I'm using that pressurized sandblaster, that's always done outside, and that's good for doing sandblasting steel wheels or anything like that, any bigger stuff. And I buy these, this is just from the hardware store, a paint suit. But I always wear these because that sand will get into places you didn't even know you had. I mean, it fills your pockets, fills your shoes up. You need some type of a face shield. I've got this old one here, and it's got a couple of vents in the back for airflow. It's got a small window to see out of. And even with these vents, these things always steam up inside. You can never see out of them very long. So you sandblast a couple minutes, usually you got to take the hood off, let it air out, and then start again. What I've been using for years now is this here, and this was this was from a paint class I went to years ago. We had a fresh air supply system in the shop. It was a Tyvek suit with this hood. You always need to wear some type of respirator, and I just use one of these here, put that underneath, and there's plenty of room to fit this in. That'll also cause these things to steam up. I buy my sand in bags at the Menards store, and you can use beach sand. There's all different kinds of media, walnut shells, and different things you can use, but you should avoid silica sand unless you've got a fresh air supplied suit. Silica sand is very bad on the lungs, and when you're looking for sand, get something that doesn't contain silica. Main thing is when you're using these sandblasters, take care of your lungs, don't breathe this stuff in, wear the proper protection. Okay, a couple days ago I had all these sandblasters out. I've got the hood of a 1965 wheel horse tractor that I owned for years, and I gave it to my grandson, and the hood needed some repairs, so I was welding it up and sandblasting it. So I used 3 of these sandblasters on it. So let's take a look at how they work. Let's use this recycling sandblaster. To fill this up, you can actually take the bag off of it. I don't mess with that. I just take the tip off, and I always keep a little container of sand around just for this. And I just pour it right down in there. Shake it down in the bag. Usually fill it up about halfway, that's about where that is. And the thing with these, being it recycles that sand, after using it for a while, it'll turn to powder and it won't cut anymore. and that stuff will kind of sit on top. If it's not working like it's supposed to, I'll shake it up a few times, mix some of that up, get some of the fresh sand in the bottom, and then when it is completely turned to powder, just take the tip off and just dump it out and refill it. I'm going to use it on the back side of this fender. There's some welds on there, and I'll show you how it works. Yeah, you can't get that clean of a job using a wire wheel or a clean and strip disc or even a grinder. Sandblasting has still got to be about the best way to clean up rough surfaces like that, remove rust. And that recycler sandblaster is just real handy for spot welds. Putting a quarter panel on a car or core support and you've got to just clean up welds. It works real good. You can use it in the shop. It's not a lot of dust come out of it. That sandblaster is my #1 tool to clean up welds. So there's lots of options for sandblasting. And like I said, this I don't think is available anymore, but I looked on Amazon. There's other companies that make the recycling sandblasters. So these things actually get a lot of use in a shop. You don't have to worry about covering the whole place with sand. And as far as the other ones go, there's other companies that make the big siphon ones. They make the pressurized ones. What I'm seeing mostly now on Amazon is the small handheld gravity feed sandblaster. And I haven't used one of those, but they look like they'd be pretty handy too. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit that subscribe button if you already haven't done it, and thanks for watching.